views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Welcome to today's verdict. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesch. We have a packed show today. First up, we're going to be discussing college transcripts. In the past, students would have a difficult time getting those transcripts, especially if they owed the college any money. Things have changed. We have a guest on set, State Senator Kevin Thomas. He's going to tell us a little bit about a new law which protects students and making sure that they can get their transcripts. Next up, we have an interesting topic of continuing our series on worker protections involving those who are delivering the food to all of us, especially as this pandemic starts to weigh down. Certainly something you're going to want to hear. And lastly, we have a friend of mine on the show. His name is Adam Goldgell. He's an artist. He's fantastic and so important to give you a sense of happiness during these trying times. So stay with us. Today's verdict has so much more coming up right now. All right, and welcome back to today's verdict. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesch. We have with us the Deputy Commissioner of the Office of Labor Policy and Standards, Benjamin Holt. How you doing today, Benjamin?
Good morning. I'm doing well, and thank you so much for having me on today.
It's our pleasure. This is a very important topic, worker protections when it comes to delivery. People in Manhattan, I was telling you off camera, that I recently witnessed an accident myself involving a delivery person on my block when a passenger in a cab opened up a door right into the bike rider. He went flying, his food went flying, police had to come, ambulance had to come, and I started to think to myself, well, such a dangerous job. I'm thinking just how quickly he has to go from apartment to apartment to get the food there that's hot, to make sure he's there on time. How many protections, they hardly have any protections, and now we're changing this. Am I correct?
That's right. That is the big thing that is happening now, is really New York City is stepping forward and, again, in the worker protection sphere, really leading the way with new regulation for an industry, that has grown tremendously recently during the pandemic. We now estimate there are about 70,000 food delivery workers working for apps and other third-party services in the city. So yeah, this is the beginning, I think, of trying to figure out ways to make this industry work for all New Yorkers.
This legislation, should I say, or this movement is coming in pieces, which is fine because at least it's getting done. But we should probably review some of the past achievements. And I know in January there were certain regulations that have come through. Why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about what you were able to achieve so far, if you could?
Absolutely. And you're right, this is all happening in phases. So phase one is January 2022 of this year. There was a new requirement that apps and other third-party food delivery services get a license from our agency. So we are now licensing these businesses. And there's actually a list of licensees available on our website for anyone who's interested in looking at that. There were also several consumer and restaurant protections that were part of that framework that went into effect. So for example, limitations on the types and amounts of fees that the apps can charge either to restaurants or to consumers. And then third, there was a small package of worker protections part of that January round, which included better access to bathrooms and more disclosures about your tips and certainty on receiving them.
And now we have the second phase, which are really about the worker themselves, about the delivery person. Why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about that, because that's what I'm really excited about.
This is the first and kind of most robust phase that's happened so far. You're right. So on April 22nd of this year, just last month, about 4 to 5 key new protections went into effect. First, delivery workers have more control over their work. They can set distance limitations on where they're going, select which bridges or tunnels they're willing to use. So really, for the first time, they're going to have much more agency over the routes that they're taking. They're also getting now far more information about trips that they are offered before they have to accept them. So they get to know, where am I going? How long is it going to take? What am I going to be paid for this delivery? They get all that up front now. It also gives them a right to regular pay, at least weekly. And they have to be given payment in a form that does not include any fees to them for purposes of receiving payment. And then
last one, by the way, which you haven't gotten
Sure.
to, I want to talk about, has to do with the free insulated delivery bag.
That's right.
That fascinates me. They would normally, I don't understand this, they'd have to provide their own bag, or maybe the food doesn't end up getting there hot enough. What is that about? The insulated bag?
I think up to this point, it's probably been a patchwork. I think we all see branded delivery bags all over the city. They're certainly out there and available. One of the keys here is that it has to be provided free of charge. It is now the obligation of the app to make sure that one is provided to a worker, and that it has to be free to that worker.
You would think that that these apps would want the delivery person to have a great bag that's insulates the food, and this makes the app successful, makes the restaurant successful. Bizarre to me, but okay.
I think there's a willingness to do it, and as you're saying, it keeps food hot. It's free advertising for them, and it's also better for the worker.
Yeah, I think you hit it earlier. We were talking about, again off air, about the streets and how, the streets of our city and the sidewalks of our city have become, so important to the lifeline now that everyone's working virtually, but they can be dangerous. All right. And I tell my son when he crosses the street, it's not just the cars. You got to look for the bikes. And I'm not just talking about the recreational bikers like I am, but I'm talking about the delivery people. In terms of the routes, we really want the delivery workers on the bike lanes and the areas and going in the right direction and not going the other way. Do you think now with this new legislation in terms of picking their own routes, they're going to understand that there are safer routes other than other kinds of routes, and maybe say, look, I can't get there safely. I'm not taking this gig. What are your thoughts on that?
The idea is to obviously provide them with space and agency to be able to make that decision. I think this will be a process. We're talking about, a relationship that's mediated through an app. So this obviously has to be rolled out, has to be accessible and meaningful for the worker in terms of what they're getting. But the idea is that, yes, it will give workers more agency to pick the routes that they're using, that in the long run, that can help in conjunction with other things. And, the same way we are talking now about the different stages of what's already been passed, we think this is going to be a long-term iterative process to fully address all the issues in this industry. But we do think this is an important starting point on routes and distances.
Let's talk tips. And I don't mean like tips to give the viewer. I'm talking about tips in the pockets of the delivery men. That is always a little confusing to me. Do they keep their entire tip? When do they find out when they get the tip? It's all a little shaky because you never really know what you're getting. Some of it's cash, some of it's on the credit card. How does that work, if I may?
Yeah, so now, and this is since January, there is a requirement to disclose to workers like the full tip that's been provided by a customer, and that tip actually has to make its way to the worker. This is an issue that's common in employment, obviously in the restaurant industry, the other types of delivery. What's different here is that tips have been up to this point unregulated because these are workers who are independent contractors. So these already there should be greater transparency around tips and what's happening, and that money should be clear how it's getting to the worker. I will flag, we've talked about this being an iterative process. We have stage 3 coming up January 1st of 2023.
Tell the viewers what's on the menu.
So
like that segment of the menu.
Yeah, no, I like that.
What's on the menu?
So, and in many ways, this is the main course. So our agency has been delegated by the council the authority to set a minimum pay standard for workers in this industry. So we are currently engaged in a study process where we're working with stakeholders on all sides to fact gather and analyze current practices. And by January 1st of the coming year, we will be issuing a rule that sets forth a new minimum payment standard. It's a real sea change for this industry, a really important win for workers. And part of that will also address gratuities and tips. It's already set forth in the law.
Right.
The tips have to be in addition to the standard we set. So that will still be money that workers are directly entitled to.
So we're going to expect you to come back on soon and let us know about the third phase, because I find this very interesting and
We'd love to be back.
very, very important. But we're going to have to leave it there, Benjamin. Hopefully you'll come back in the next couple of weeks. Tell me how things are going.
I would love to, and thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
All right, stay with us. Today's verdict has so much more right after this. All right, welcome back to today's verdict. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesch. We have with us today State Senator Kevin Thomas. First time to the show. Kevin, thanks for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm no stranger to the Bronx. Used to practice there before getting into public office.
If I open up my window and you could see the courthouse literally across the street from the Grand Concourse, you could have a little bit of a homecoming there and say hello.
Nice. I used to work there for close to a decade. Ran a clinic out of the consumer credit part called Volunteer Lawyer for a Day. So did a lot of consumer work there.
Listen, the Bronx is coming back again. You know, they got hit by COVID, but it's making its way back, and fingers crossed. You should see the buildings that are going up. Oh my God, it's amazing on the concourse. My father's been here. We started our practice back in the early '60s. So to see what would happen in the '70s and where we are now, it's just a good feeling to see it coming back again, because we got derailed for those 2.5 months, so 2.5 years. But anyway, let's get back. Let's talk to you today, because I want to talk to you a little bit about these college transcripts and students who look for their transcripts so they can either transfer to another school or just take it and use it for a job. But apparently it's not so easy if you owe the school money. Am I correct?
Correct. And this isn't tuition money. These are, fees, late fees, maybe a parking ticket here and there. So these are not tuition, because you cannot register for classes if you owe tuition for a school.
So how does the school, first of all, how does the school let you know that you're owed money, that you owe money to begin with? Are you sent, various notices? I'm sure they do have those kind of notices and emails that go out, depending on their, offices. But here is a situation where a student, most likely their last semester, or graduating or graduated, but cannot get their transcript because they owe maybe $600 or $1,000 in fees. In the past, before this new bill that came down, what would a student do to try and get that transcript? Would they make some kind of payment deal, or basically they were just out of luck?
Well, when they do request it, and if there is a hold of some sort, obviously the school would tell them what the hold is for. And if they don't clear that hold, maybe in this specific situation, they owe fees. And once they pay that, they would then release the transcript. So that could be either full payment or a payment plan.
All right, so tell the viewers what you were able to achieve, because I think it's really wonderful if you could.
Thank you, David. So my bill prohibits transcript withholding. Schools, especially degree granting schools and for-profit schools, have been using this as a tool to get students to pay up before their transcript is released. So this not only affects the student, it affects the parent and anyone that is taking care of that loved one in going to school. So this is a huge deal. that was signed by the governor just a couple of days ago into law, and it prohibits the use of that tool, which was to withhold a transcript until they pay up.
Do the schools now have an obligation to tell the students that this is now the policy? Or do the students just have to be lucky enough to watch this show or any other show to know that they now have this, the chance to be able to get their transcripts regardless of the fact if they owe any money?
You know, I would hope the university or the college would be more transparent in how they deal with this, right? They should be more transparent when it comes to the fees that they are imposing in addition to the tuition. And of course, they should be lucky to watch this show as well to find out about this newly passed law here in the state of New York.
From what I can gather over the last 6 months to a year, it looks like our city is swinging to the point where we're giving more and more protections. We're trying to those who really need it the most. Tell me what's you've been working on that maybe the viewers should know that they may end up getting some protections that they didn't know about to begin with.
Absolutely. Listen, the bills that I passed is for everyone, not just for those who are low income. For example, in 2019, when I got into office, New York State was the first in the nation to pass the Student Borrower Bill of Rights. And that even encompassed federal student loans that people take out. I recently was able to push forward with my bill about protecting co-signers of a private student loan. So those private student loans are signed by parents and grandparents and even siblings.
So what happens? So let me ask you about that.
Yes.
Let's say I was a student and my father and my mother, they co-signed for me.
Yes.
It turns out that I can't pay my student loan.
Mhm.
Are they responsible or are they not responsible?
By law, they are responsible per the promissory note that they signed off on. But now this here in New York State, it gives them rights, telling the lender to show them the documents, the payment history, because that wasn't done before. And you can actually release the co-signer now after a minimum amount of payments.
Well, who releases them? The
lender.
The
The
lender.
lender will release them. So when I was practicing in the Bronx, right, I used to see this a lot. You know, when lenders sue the parent and the student, and the parent, listen, everyone goes through hard times. No one goes to school saying, hey, I'm going to not pay my tuition and not get a job. Life happens. So we need to show some grace to these individuals, especially now. You know, we've gone through one of the worst times in our history, world history. Inflation is up. It's really hard to survive.
You know, a lot of my clients here in the Bronx, they are, you know, they've always really lived hand to mouth.
Mhm.
I've seen it, but now they can't, you know, with the eviction moratorium over, they're losing their apartments. They end up many times in the shelters. It's getting harder and harder here. Yes, it's turning around in terms of the buildings. They're starting to build better. And it looks like the landlords are starting to put some money into their buildings again. But you're right, for the average Bronxite especially, it's been a very, very difficult 2.5 years. What would you say to them with respect to your ability to help them? What, other than just saying you can hold on, you can get through this, what other things can you say to them to give them, you know, the comfort knowing that there's somebody there behind them?
I want them to know that this elected official, me, the chair of consumer protection, is always looking out for the most vulnerable amongst us, to stand up for them, to give them a voice. That's what I've been able to do for close to a decade in the Bronx when I was fighting the good fight for those who cannot afford an attorney when they get sued over consumer debt matters. So as the chair of consumer protection now in the state, I've got 19.5 million people that I watch over, not just on, you know, these kind of matters, but on all matters dealing with consumers. So I am here for them. I will be their voice, and I'm looking forward to push forward with even more protections for them going forward.
Well, State Senator Kevin Thomas, I want to thank you very much. I know you're a very busy man. You gave us some good time today, and hopefully you'll come back and tell us some of the other bills you've been working on.
Absolutely. Thank you, David. You're awesome.
Oh, my pleasure. Stay with us. Today's verdict has so much more right after this. Okay, welcome back to today's verdict. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesch. Many times we try to feature non-lawyers on our show, and it gives me the pleasure to bring in somebody that I grew up with, Adam Goldgell from Queens. Adam, how you doing today?
I'm excellent. The gardeners, of course, showed up right at this moment. I'm good. You might hear some gardeners in the background.
Nice having somebody on that knows Queens Village, knows how the sales, gives me a sense of nostalgia. But the main reason we have you on here is you're a very talented artist and you've had quite a unique life. So why don't we just tell the viewers a little bit about you, and then from there we'll talk about some of the artwork.
Sure. Okay. I'll try to encapsulate it the best I can. So I grew up with you, David, in Queens, and my mother died when I was very young, about 13 years old. So that kind of set a path of a little strangeness. My father raised us himself, and then when I was about 25, he was one of the first AIDS patients in New York, and passed from it. So I dealt with that. That was an unusual circumstance for us. So I lost both parents by the time I was 25. Up until that point, I was a magician. I did magic, clowning, hypnosis shows. I had a company that did that. And then I did that with my first wife. We had an event production company till I was about 30 years old. And then when we broke up, I started cooking. I went to Culinary Institute of America, and I really fell in love with cooking, and that became a passion. And then I cooked for the last 20 years. And in that time period, I got sick. I got bladder cancer about 12 years ago. And in that period of time, I started meditating and started, recontemplating things as people do when they get sick, I guess. And that was 12 years ago, and here I still am. And it kind of grew into this art thing because I had a meditation practice that turned into into art. So what I do is I meditate for about 15 minutes in the morning, and then I start drawing. It came out of absolutely nowhere. I have absolutely no idea how. My grandfather was an artist, but I have zero training. I just started one day and just kept going, and here we are today.
Now, some of your artwork it is behind you. Am I correct?
Yes. Some of it's behind me. Yes.
Okay.
I have hundreds of things I started doing a couple of years ago. Every morning I do something. So some of my art is behind me. Yes.
I've seen your work. I think it's very good.
Thank you.
Do you show anybody else your work other than, let's say, maybe a Facebook or social media? Do you ever go to different places, galleries or anything to show off what you do?
Well, not as of yet, but a few people have actually contacted me. They're interested in it. It's like, I guess they classify me as like art brute, which is, I have an old friend who's an art teacher, and she sent me a magazine of where she felt my art fell, and it was all people from lunatic asylums.
I don't know what that says about the art, but I
don't know.
Like it, or maybe I'm a lunatic. I'm not sure. But let me ask you a question, because this is a law show, and we are always about protecting your legal rights. How do you think you want to go about protecting your works so that somebody doesn't copy them, somebody doesn't just steal them and end up selling them on the street in front of the Met? Like what would you do to protect your art?
Well, I'm looking what I'm interested in doing now, and is this NFT situation where I could all my art is digital. All my art is digital, and my understanding of this NFT is I could create some sort of people could create ownership of the pieces that way. Up until now, I have not protected anything, but as people are getting more interested, I think I need to. So.
Do your works ever come from a place from while you're meditating itself? Is that what you're
every piece?
Every
every
piece. So
piece.
it's things
Every-
that you're thinking about while you're meditating?
Well, I'm not thinking about anything when I'm meditating. So you're meditating, the idea is to create like an open space where there is nothing, and then things just pop into your head. I mean, and I just kind of go from there. And then when I do the art, and I'm going to invite any of you viewers that are interested to go to my Facebook page, and I'll let them, they could join as a friend of mine, and they can see every day I put a message with the art that is relatable to what I'm drawing. So that's really what it is. I have my own little message that comes out through the art somehow, and that's it. It's like an open field.
Is there a common theme among your work? Do you notice it when you look back at it and say, oh, these are always friends, or this is old family
Yes,
I'm missing?
there
What's the
is.
theme?
I consider myself to be a non-dualist, which is someone like if you're familiar with like Eckhart Tolle or Muji or any of these kind of philosophers, that's really what I personally believe in. And my work just kind of just ends up in that direction, which is, the moment that we live in is extremely important. And that's really what it boils down to, the moment that we live in, and, everything kind of goes from there, it's
Switching gears for a second, getting back to the cooking. I know you've opened up different places and you've had different restaurants and different things. What are your thoughts about that? Are you going back into that? What's the story with the restaurants?
Well, what I love now is doing it exactly the way I'm doing it. I've done some classes online. I do some consulting if people are interested. During the summer, I do a camp, which I find to be fun. And I do it as I want to do it now. I don't work in restaurants anymore. I just kind of do it as I, here and there. I love food. I love how food communicates culture. To me, that's very exciting. I love all international cuisine. I've been studying it for the past 25 years, and that's where I'm at with the food. So
let me ask you a question. Let's say you have a viewer now and they're watching. They have the artistic bug, whether that's creating food or creating paintings or creation. What tips would you give to a young person right now who's watching in the Bronx, in Manhattan, or in Florida?
Don't listen to anyone.
Okay.
And just do it. Do it and just keep doing it, and that's it. And don't hold yourself up to anyone else. Don't just, get ideas and just do your own thing and continue, because that's all. There is no art if you don't create it, and that's it. Just create it, whether you cook or you sing or you paint, it doesn't really matter. Just let it out and do it, and don't care about anybody's opinion of it. And there was also more good advice I was given. Don't, there are no rules when it comes to art, and that's the freedom that really is nice to experience that. There are no rules.
Adam, thanks so much for coming on. You've given us some good insight, and certainly protect your works, because I love to see the stuff that you do. And hopefully maybe you come back 6 months in a year and show us some more of your artwork. Okay.
That would be great. Thank you, David. And so that's it. So that anybody could go to Adam Goldgell, join me on Facebook or Instagram, and they could become my friend. I always like to meet new people.
Yeah, you want to be friends with Adam. All right, stay tuned. Today's Verdict has so much more right after this. Okay, well, that's all we have for today. I'd like to thank our guests for joining us, and of course you, the viewers, for watching. If you have a topic or an issue that you would like to see on a future edition of Today's Verdict, just feel free to email me at davidlesch@bronxnet.org. Till the next time, know your issues, reach a verdict. See you in 2 weeks.